All right, let's get right into it. Today is February 28th, 2026. And it feels like our world is more connected and honestly more fragile than it's ever been. An event in just one part of the globe can send these massive shockwaves literally everywhere else. So today, we're going to trace those connections. We're going to follow the ripple effect from a world that is right on the edge. And it all starts with this breaking headline: explosions rocking Abu Dhabi, missiles being intercepted over Qatar. This right here shows us the conflict isn't contained anymore. It's spilling across borders, and it is happening incredibly fast. But a headline like this, it's really just the latest spark in what feels like a global tinderbox. To really understand the impact of what's happening today, we have to take a quick step back and see how we even got to this point. What's just so striking when you look at this is the speed of it all. I mean, think about it. In late 2023, this was a regional fight. By April of 2024, Iran and Israel were trading direct military strikes. And then, the huge turning point last summer, Israel hits Iran's nuclear sites, and this is the crucial part, the US gets directly involved. That's the chain reaction that brings us right to this moment. A massive American military buildup happening at the exact same time diplomats are scrambling to find a way out. And you have to remember, this isn't happening in a vacuum. While all our eyes are on the Middle East, there's another really dangerous conflict brewing between Pakistan and Afghanistan over cross-border raids. The point here is that this picture of a world under pressure isn't just about one region. We are seeing these points of friction flare up all over the globe, all at the same time. Okay, so that leads us to the first big ripple effect, because when you get geopolitical tremors like these, the first place you always feel them is in the global economy. And it's a totally fair question, right? How can something happening thousands of miles away actually have a real connection to your finances? Well, believe it or not, the link is surprisingly direct. This headline really gets to the most immediate fear: the price of oil. The Strait of Hormuz, which is right in the middle of this whole conflict zone, it's one of the planet's most critical choke points. A massive chunk of the world's oil supply has to pass through that tiny waterway every single day. So just the threat of it closing is enough to send the energy markets into a total panic. But here's where the story gets a lot more complicated. So you have the markets panicking about an oil price spike, but the deeper economic truth, according to the World Bank, is actually a global slowdown. Just look at these forecasts for 2026. Global growth is actually projected to shrink. And not because of this conflict, but because trade is getting weaker and protectionism is on the rise. So this is the really crucial point. We're facing all this new instability from a position of economic weakness. This chart is, well, it's stark. 5 years after the 2020 recession, almost 60% of low-income countries are still poorer than they were before. That is a much, much slower recovery than we saw after the 2009 crisis. What it really means is that millions and millions of people have absolutely no cushion to absorb the next shock, whether that's higher gas prices or a disruption in the food supply. And all of that brings us to our next ripple: how all of this instability is basically forcing a complete rewrite of the rules for the global energy market. Analysts have a great term for this: the Great Fragmentation. And it's a perfect description. The old idea of one big universal energy market, that's kind of falling apart. And in its place, we're seeing these regional blocks pop up, each one with its own strategy based on its own security, its own politics, and its own unique demand for power. So in this new fragmented world, a totally new set of rules is taking over. First, the hungriest new customer for energy isn't a country, it's AI. These massive data centers need unbelievable amounts of constant clean power. Second, policy walls are going up. Think of Europe's carbon tax or America's rules about foreign companies. These things now decide who even gets to sell into these huge markets. And finally, transparency is everything. You have to be able to prove and certify your entire supply chain, showing exactly where your energy and your materials came from. And this new landscape creates some really surprising knock-on effects. Here's a fascinating one. With EV sales kind of soft in the West, major car makers are actually pivoting back to hybrids. So what about the battery makers? While they're shifting their capacity away from cars and toward the absolutely booming market for grid-scale energy storage, which is essential for backing up both our power grid and all those power-hungry AI data centers. So how does this all come together? How does that final ripple, this messy combination of military risk, a slowing economy, and a splintered energy market, actually affect us? Well, it lands right on our dinner tables. Let's take a look at the Food and Agriculture Organization's Food Price Index. It's one of the best ways we have to measure the global cost of living because it tracks a whole basket of essential stuff like cereals, vegetable oil, dairy, meat, and sugar. Now, at first glance, the latest numbers look okay. The overall index is actually down a little bit. But when you dig in, you see all the volatility under the surface. Vegetable oil is up over 2% because of production problems in one part of the world, but dairy is down 5% because of a surplus somewhere else. What this really tells us is that the global system is being pulled in opposite directions all at once. It's balanced on a knife's edge, for now. So let's just think about the journey we just took. We've connected a military strike in the Middle East all the way to the rise of AI data centers, to the creation of new carbon taxes, and finally to the changing price of the food that we all eat. And that leaves us with one last massive question. In a world that's defined by this great fragmentation, what are the new things that will hold us all together? As all the old connections start to break, what's going to stop these ripples of instability from turning into a tidal wave? That right there is the central challenge of 2026 and for all the years to come.